Hello, everyday leaders. It is Tuesday night. It is December the 1st. Unbelievable. Here we go. We've been going through COVID-19. We have been trying to bring everyday leaders to you on this platform to have spiritual growth, personal growth, professional growth, all kinds of things. We've had games on here from Thanksgiving, virtual games to play with your families, and so many leaders that are coming on and adding value. And I am just so excited tonight to be able to bring one more incredible leader that is going to talk about diversity, inclusion, workforce, all those questions that you guys have all the time. This is the person that can really start answering those for you. So if you're in job transition, if you have had any questions about workplace development and how you're surviving during COVID on Zoom, this is the girl that you want to try to get questions answered from. So if you're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, you have any comments, we can see your comments here as we're live. Go ahead and ask those tonight, and we will put you on the screen. And if you're following us on the replay, just put replay, hashtag replay, and we will come back and answer those questions for you as well. So to get started, I would like to introduce our guest, Mary Leone. Mary Leone, thank you so much for joining Everyday Leaders tonight.
Thank you so much for asking me. I have been so excited for the past 2 weeks. So thank you.
This is really fun. We've got a couple of, this is great. Hi, Doug. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. And Constance says awesome. So we have followers already, right?
Hi, everybody.
Hello. So Mary, why we connected is because we're in a group, we're in a networking hub. And we actually just both joined this on LinkedIn, which I think has been amazing through COVID-19.
Yes.
Because, sometimes it's like, well, where do I find resources? How can I help each other? How can I add value? And so both of us have kind of showed up and said, hey, I think you have something interesting that I'm also curious about. And so talk to our listeners now about all the things that you're doing during COVID and how you're developing kind of your brand right now.
Sure. It has been an interesting process. So quite a journey for me. So when I had decided at the end of last year that I was going to end up leaving my company, I wanted to do something to follow my passion. My passion is diversity recruiting. It's helping veterans in transition as well as people with disabilities. And so I wanted to do something a little different. So COVID happened in March and my plan changed a little bit. I wasn't expecting everything to kind of shut down. However, I started doing lots and lots of networking. I wanted to connect with people who were at companies that were doing best practices in the diversity recruiting space, in transitioning veterans and people with disabilities. So again, I was trying to meet with 15 to 20 new people every week. And I learned a lot. So along the journey, I ended up talking to at least 6 people at higher levels in the organization. And people continued to tell me, Mary, you have such a passion for this. Why are you just trying to find one company? You should really go out and hang your own shingle. So I finally listened. And yes, it took me 6 people to tell me that. But I finally listened. I ended up meeting my business partner, Alan. And it was a common networking contact that we had. And he connected us, and we started Diversity Outreach Partners. And what we do, it's a fabulous concept. So a lot of companies do affirmative action plans. And when they do their affirmative action plans, what they do is they put it on the shelf and they don't think about it for the whole year. Well, what we do is we help them build bridges to organizations, and we help them understand what kind of relationships they can develop as part of their good faith efforts. Those are the technical government words, good faith efforts, to try and figure out, do they have gaps with females? Do they have gaps with people of color? Do they have gaps with veterans? Or do they have gaps with people with disabilities? And if they do, we can help them. So we've developed hundreds of organizations in our network that can help them with those needs, and to try and figure out how to build those relationships. And those organizations have candidates that want and need jobs. And so we can help with developing those relationships. We can do the reporting for them. We can do the tracking, and all for the fraction of the cost of a person. So we can be their outsourced HR partner. We can be kind of the right hand for their HR department. And it's fun. It's something that I wake up every day and I'm excited to do. I love connecting people. That's my superpower. So if you see this cape that's on the back, it's because I have a superpower of connecting people. That's why I love doing stuff like this. So connecting and trying to figure out, how can we build those relationships, and who do I know that can help you? And it's the same thing with companies. So what kind of organizations can help you with your diversity outreach to be a better organization?
Mm-hmm. And it's
So
all about collaboration, right? We
it
keep
is.
hearing this word, but it's really not. I say so many companies are saying, okay, I want to be in this space.
Mhm.
And so you look at everybody wants to be a coach or everybody wants to be a recruiter. But the thing is, you all have a unique story. Everybody has a unique story. So doing that in your own way adds value to that space.
Yes.
And so whatever that looks like for you, I am encouraging people to reach out and figure out how to start that.
Mhm.
Start that in your own ideas and plans, because things like what you're talking about, you go to a network meeting and you
Mhm.
meet someone, and then here your plan starts to come to fruition, and now you're,
Mhm.
offering these services. And the thing is, a lot of people, I think, are rethinking how they're going to go back and
Mhm.
do their business. What did it look
Mhm.
like before? And
Right.
so things that you're offering are just, get on Zoom, have a conversation,
Right.
understand, how to assess their market and then where their gaps are, like you said.
Mhm.
And it can all be done pretty easily, right?
Right, right. They can. And this brings me back to I met a wonderful, wonderful networking contact several years ago, and she asked me to participate. One of my passions is helping people with disabilities. So I'm the vice chair of an organization called Disability in North Texas. And so what we do is we promote employers to hire more people with disabilities, and to have, it doesn't necessarily have to be a special program, but to make sure that there's an avenue and there is outreach to various organizations or schools.
Mhm.
And so this networking contact had asked me to participate on an employer panel. And one of the messages that I wanted to get across is it's hard to start, but what you need to do is you need to do one thing. Okay, start with one thing. And when you do that, and it's successful, because it will be, you'll have some success. So build on that. And then maybe you can do two things. But
Mhm.
that's okay. It's okay to start small. You don't have to say, hey, I'm going to go hire 50 people. You can say, hey, let's have one or two interns this summer. If they work out, that's great. Let's hire them back, or let's convert them to full-time people. But again, let's do something.
Mhm. I have a question that came in. Can I go
Yes.
ahead and share that? This is
Sure, please.
from Joe,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name, so we'll just call you Joe.
Yep.
Um,
Josie.
yes, Joe C. So he says, thinking into the future a bit, where do you both see the intersection between virtual work and physical in-person jobs?
hmm That is a great question. I think there's going to be a mix. I think companies and I think people have all learned a lot through this pandemic. I think companies have realized that, people can still do their jobs when they're working at home. And granted, we're not going to have a pandemic forever, but there's probably going to be more of a balance. I think some people who, like me, I have never been the kind of person who likes to work at home. My husband has a small business that he does out of our house, and I feel like I'm intruding on his space. However, I like it. I found that I have a way that I can connect with people doing Zoom meetings, doing calls, other ways, electronically. So I think there's going to be a mix of both. So people like me have realized, there are some good things that can happen from this. I can see my kids more. I used to leave at 4:45 in the morning so I could get to the gym at 5:30 when it opened. I'd exercise and then I'd get home. I'd rush home so I could be home for dinner. And then the kids would literally go up in their rooms and do homework because they were all teenagers. And so I would see them for maybe a half hour. Now I get to see them before they leave for school. I get to see them even though it's, just a wave if I'm on a call. I get to see them when they come home, and it's nice. I enjoy being able to do that and interact more. I'm still in my little bubble doing my own thing. However, I think everybody has learned that it's okay to do things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what the future is going to look like. So
Mm-hmm.
what about you? What do you think?
I do too. I think what's happened, is people are taking more time management skills classes, right? Because you say, I'm at home. Okay. If you were at home working or you had just transitioned to a job at home, it's like, oh, I can do laundry. Oh, I can go vacuum. I can do these things during, I can take my lunch hour and do this stuff. And really, it's just still structuring it around what you believe you need to get done, right? So if you did that after work, like just thinking about how to do things like this, like putting your phone on silence for 30 minutes, right? Or making sure you're intentionally doing things during conference calls so you don't get disturbed with emails. It's those kinds of things and how to manage that like you would if you were in the office, setting those standards up at home. And I think you can be really successful if you set up those kinds of parameters. But just saying like, oh my gosh, move the dining room table over. I've got to put my office in here now. That's not going to work long term, right? It can work for a weekend, but it can't work long term because you really need the right environment and to create the right space for yourself to be successful. And I think that way, probably a lot of companies are thinking about the money that they could save not having cubicles, to have that overhead, but maybe having more production space if they're a production company. And so I think there's a huge shift that's going to happen. I love Simon Sinek because he talks about the infinite game. And I think this is the exact example, of we can't think in a finite mindset. We have to be thinking about what's that going to look like in 10 years down the road. What if we pushed ourselves to the limit and kind of changed the dynamics of our groups that we're working with? What could that look like? So I love that question. Thank you so much, Joe.
Well, I wanted to add one more thing. So one of the things that was hard for me at first when I became a leader, and I had a very large team for a while, I had 40 people reporting into me. And one of the things that was hard is trying to figure out for the people that were within my vision. So I could walk out of my office, I could walk within probably 10 seconds to almost any one of their offices. And that was easier to build those relationships. But it took me a while to figure out how do I build those relationships over the phone. Now, everybody was in the US, so it wasn't building it, with different countries, but everybody was within the US. However, some people were 2,000 miles away. And so it was trying to figure out, what does their schedule look like? Because we had different time zones. What do they like? How can I make that connection when I can't see them every day? And that's okay. And it's the same thing in this virtual world that we're living in. Maybe I'm in my house and you're in your house. We can still have those conversations, but it's trying to figure out how does that work? And so that's what we're trying to figure. Sometimes it's been painful going through some of those lessons, but I think we've all gotten a lot smarter.
And I think we've given ourselves grace too. Because I think a lot of people, and I was fortunate enough because in 2013, I stretched myself and caused myself to grow in huge ways, got outside of my comfort zone. And I went to a company that we were using Zoom for international training. And so I got to develop a sales team and all kinds of things that, I had never done before, agendas and sales meetings, but we were doing all of this on Zoom. And so for me, as it came into the 2020, I'm like, oh, this is a piece of cake, right?
Like, I've done this before, right?
Let's use the breakout rooms. Let's be smart about this. So when I'm helping now people with virtual summits and trainings, I'm like, this is really easy. I can help you do this in a second, And so I have to thank my experience from that. When you're going through it, you're like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to learn this? But once you get a handle on it, you're like, piece of cake, right? It's like riding a bicycle. So those fears that a lot of people were experiencing, I'm like, that's just kind of in my zone. I'm still doing it. So I just wish I would have brought stock.
Yes.
I mean,
yes,
come
definitely.
on.
Yep.
Oh, all right. Joe's got another question here for us. And so he says, and so do you see a new way or breed of platforms for how this will work and how it will happen either way? So back to our question about virtual work and physical work. What do you think about that?
I do. I do think that there's going to be ways to do it differently. I'll give you an example. So, you know that I'm a person who has a passion for helping people with disabilities. So one of the roles that I had at my last company is I helped with workplace accommodations. Well, we had a candidate that had come in that had a hearing impairment, and so they needed to figure out a way to be able to do that virtually. And so there were all sorts of tools that we had to figure out how to use, but they were able to successfully do because on campus, when you do an interview and you have somebody with a hearing impairment, they provide a translator. And so an interpreter. And so, but unless you know about that or you arrange it ahead of time for the interview, then you're kind of on your own. So I worked with the recruiting manager. We tried to figure out the situation, used a whiteboard. They were able to share information via text. But I see tools like that coming and improving and growing and building so that we can do a better job. I was on the Ability Summit that Microsoft has every year, and it was in May, and it was the 10th anniversary. Fabulous company, fabulous ideas, wonderful, wonderful presentations. They are a very forward-thinking company where instead of creating the product or creating the service and then thinking about when they're ready to go to market or they've gone to market, thinking about all of the accessibility issues, they think about that at the beginning. So they have their product management team. They have all of the people that are involved from a diversity perspective to try and understand how everybody can use this, not just a certain group of able-bodied people. Mm-hmm. And so again, it's wonderful to think about those things. So we have the companies like Microsoft who are thinking about that, and they're helping us, Joe, with developing what is the next. I don't know what it looks like. I'm not that technical, but what is that next? And they're doing all sorts of really cool, fun things. And one of the things I've also found in my everyday life, so my youngest daughter, so kids are glued to their phones. Okay, they love them and they do everything on their phones. And I know my kids as teenagers, I have 3 of them, they would prefer to talk via their phones, not literally talk, but electronically talk instead of actually calling somebody. And so that's much different from my generation. I would much rather speak to somebody. But one of the things I noticed for my youngest daughter, and this was a couple of years ago when something had happened with her phone, and so she was using some of the accessibility features because, and again, they were meant for somebody who had a specific disability, but she found that it was so much easier to use, just like Siri. So, when you're asking your phone to do something for you, and so you don't have to push things in. Well, that wasn't really developed with that in mind. It's a great use of it, but there are so many things that are happening, and there are so many improvements and ways to make us better and more efficient and work differently. So, Joe, that's where I think things are going, and the route that Microsoft is taking, and I applaud them because again, there were so many wonderful ideas and new approaches that they shared in May. And so if anybody's interested, I'm guessing that it's going to be virtual again in May. It was absolutely wonderful. And they actually have all of their sessions on YouTube. So it's just the Ability Summit. But again, fabulous information. And that's where we need to go. We need to think about it with all of those forms of diversity so that we can make better products and services for everybody.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. That's a great question, Joe. Thank you so much for participating in this. One of the things that I think about is, when, like you said, when things are designed for one group of people, and then they end up helping an entirely different population. And so that is so important as we start to think about as entrepreneurs that are out here saying, well, what's the gap? Where am I going to be successful? Because there's a ton of companies that are going to start from after COVID, right? They're all planning it right now. And so thinking about these things in the beginning, that can really help you design a successful, sustainable business for the future. I've got one more comment here from Doug.
Hey, Doug.
Hi. He says, building relationships is a skill that does not require a person right in front of you. This will be a big challenge for leaders in the future.
I agree. I think some leaders do it well, and I think some leaders probably need a little bit more practice. because sometimes they need somebody right in front. But I think leaders in large organizations are used to not having everybody that reports to them in front of them. And so they're forced to be able to do something like that. But that's a really good point, Doug.
Mm-hmm. Excellent point. Because it all starts with us, right? If we're not developing ourselves as leaders, then it's really difficult to take people where we haven't been. And starting things like entrepreneurs and trying to resource things out. What do we do ourselves? And then what do we resource out?
Right.
And so collaborating and finding the right people so that we can build the teams that we can really depend on is so important.
I mean, I have two ideas that I wanted to throw out there. So talking about the virtual environment we are, the Zoom, what other platforms, I saw two really innovative things that companies were doing. One, so people get Zoomed out, they do, and they participate on meeting after meeting, but the company actually put together a process where you could arrange your meeting, and then you could arrange to have a gift certificate sent or a meal sent electronically so that it could be delivered at the right time to the right place for the people that were participating. And it could be a coffee break, it could be a meal, it could be something else. And then another woman I've just recently met, and we're scheduled to talk later this week, she was known for doing care packages and just sending them out to many people that she knew. Well, she's developed a business now on that. I mean, who doesn't need a care package when you're working at home and you're in the same four walls, for days on end? I mean, sometimes there's weeks, especially before the gyms opened, I would go out maybe twice a week, and that was to get milk at the grocery store, and that was it. So that was my only time out of the house. So that's tough.
It is tough.
That's a great idea and a way to be innovative.
And I think we're all kind of going back through that again, right? I think we were in denial in March. We said, oh, yeah, we're not going to go back through this in October. Here it is, December, the 1st of December.
Yeah.
And we're thinking like, okay, how much longer, right? We can tolerate this. But again, sustainable practices that we have to decide, what are we going to do? What's going to trigger us, right? Because I think a lot of us are struggling with, where's my breaking point? And so if I need support or if I need resources, who else out there can I connect to? And so that's why I love, the way that we met and the way that people are just showing up to say, okay, I need some more stimulation. I know that there's something else out there that I need to be participating in. And so I really want to encourage people, if you haven't done that yet, if you're not on a different platform in social media, I don't know, try TikTok to have fun, right? But just get inspired and then think about the things that you can show up and serve others and be a real servant leader.
Yes. And if people need ideas for different organizations, ways to volunteer, you can actually do that online now. If you don't want to do it in person, but I'll give you an idea of something that I did, and it was a little different. So I'm not nearly the expert that you are in Zoom, but I'm learning. So there's this organization that I belong to. It's a national organization called VETS and the number 2 in industry. And so I'm a networking facilitator, and then I also do one-on-one career coaching for veterans in transition as well as military spouse. And so one of the things that was started this spring, and we actually have another event coming up on Saturday. So if anybody is interested, feel free to direct message me and I can send you the invitation. It's VETS, VET, like veterans. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay.
I was typing so fast.
So I remember the very first event we had, which we had over 200 people participating, and now we have upwards of 400 to 500 people registering for the event every 3 weeks. And so what we do is it's a networking event. So if you can think of that many people on a Zoom platform, and then they randomize you and put you into networking rooms. So you can have a more intimate conversation with 7 to 10 of your best friends for 25 minutes. Then you're brought back into the main room. You have some speakers. You meet a lot of really interesting people. But again, I hadn't done something like that before. I'd been to a networking meeting, but it was really more of a, 70 to 100 person, and you kind of milled around, or maybe you had hors d'oeuvres or drinks or lunch or something like that. And it was so very different. So there were a lot of kinks at the beginning, but we kind of worked those out. And and it works great now. But
Mm.
you meet so many interesting people and you can adapt. I mean, all of us are used to being Gumby at this point, and we're used to, bending, kind of in all different directions or turning different ways because we have to. And
Mhm.
so try those things. And if you don't like it, you don't have to go back, or maybe you try it twice. But you never know who you're going to meet and how you're going to be able to help them or how they can help you. So
Yeah.
I would just say, just jump in the deep end.
Yep, I think so. Oh, you're welcome, Joe. Happy to do it. I think when you love what you do and we show up for others
Mhm,
and really having teachable experiences, there are
mhm,
so many people that we just show up and add value because, it's like we're being authentic.
mhm.
And so I really want to encourage people, like if you have a story and you want to share that with the world, reach out to me. I'm at
Right.
everydayleaders.com. I will bring you on here. We can share everything because it is so important to me. I think, people are sitting at home thinking, have I connected to the right person? Do I have the
Mhm,
right resources? Am I going to have to go back to the same job? Do I want to do that anymore?
mhm,
This opportunity has given us the time to, like you said, get online and learn things that we never even knew existed. And
mhm.
so if you're thinking about doing something different, really stretch yourself and go for it, right?
Right, right. I mean, Doug actually just did a post today about that. He made a decision. He was going to sit for up. He has a question there, but
Yes,
I'm gonna give him a shout out anyway. So he did a great job, and he was wanting to study for, I can't remember, certification or and it required a lot. I mean, he put together a study group. It required almost 60 hours of training, and it was very intense. But again, he had that goal. That's what he wanted to do, and he achieved it. And I think I'm guessing he probably got 100% based on all the time that he put in to it. But again, what is important to you? What do you want to do during this time? Now, my daughter, I mean, she decided she wanted to learn baking, and she's become an expert baker, much to my, waistline's demise. But it's been fabulous trying all of those things. But what do you want to do? I mean,
right.
what do you want to learn? So, okay. So I
Yeah.
didn't mean to interrupt that
No.
question.
So from a diversity recruiting standpoint, he says, what is the one of the most innovative approaches that you've seen a company use during 2020?
One of the things that I've seen, and I'm going to talk specifically about the veteran community, uh, the veteran community has really been doing a lot of innovative things. And they have special programs for military spouse. They have veterans programs for transitioning. They actually have a program where you can still be in the military, and the military pays your benefits. The military pays your salary, but you can work for 6 months at a company and get all of that experience. The company, it's free for the company.
Mhm.
You may have to pay a small administrative fee, but it's a great way to get that experience your last 6 months, in addition to, making a successful transition. You can decide, hey, I like this, or maybe I don't. And a lot of times people convert into those companies. And so what I would say is a lot of companies are doing a lot more online. I haven't seen them as much outside of the veteran space, but they're having virtual career fairs, and they're having a lot of because the veterans community is not necessarily located in one spot. So if Verizon has a huge presence in Dallas or a huge presence in New York, okay, and then you want to have everybody lumped in that geographic area, veterans aren't like that. Maybe they're in Japan, or maybe they're in San Francisco, or maybe they're in Fort Wayne, Indiana, but they all want to live in Dallas.
Mhm.
Well, they need to have that virtual opportunity. And so you're seeing people like Amazon do weekly calls, and they have a very specialized veteran as well as military spouse, um, I guess, event. And so what they do is they talk a little bit about Amazon. They bring their recruiters on for all of their special programs in their specific areas, and then they break people up into rooms, and you can talk. The event is usually an hour and a half, but then you can talk one-on-one. You can build that relationship, and then you can start right into that pipeline.
Mm.
And so a lot of other companies are doing that same thing. I've seen it kind of all over the place, but I think the veterans community is doing a great job
Mm.
with that. And maybe they've been forced because, again, so many people, if you're stationed in Savannah, Georgia, you don't necessarily want to stay there. maybe you want to move to the Upper Peninsula in Michigan. Maybe you want to move to South Dakota. Who knows? But you need to have that virtual platform so that you can be successful in attracting the right people.
Well, and I think companies, I think Joe asked, maybe have touched on this earlier, but people that are thinking about doing things differently, they're going to start integrating some of these practices, right, into their daily routine when they go back to post-COVID. And I think so it does really change the dynamics of the things that we're offering and the way that we're doing it. So I think there's going to just be a lot more punch, right, in all of these companies, because it's going to be an expectation. Like, you're not doing that? You know?
Yes.
Just don't put a Band-Aid on it. Just make it sustainable.
Yes. I do think that a big opportunity, and I'm interested in your thoughts, but a big opportunity is still the onboarding process. Because for the onboarding process, you really need to figure out how you can form that bond within the first 60 to 90 days. Because if you don't, and employees aren't engaged, and they haven't made any connections, you don't have to have a best friend, but you need to have people that you feel connected with so that you can, be successful at that company. Because you spend a lot of time there. And I think that a virtual onboarding is a little bit more challenging.
It is.
At least it's my thought.
Well, and I have a little bit of experience with that. A group that I've been working with this last year, they use the EOS system. So, you know what that's about? Yes. So that's fabulous, because that's really kind of like, it dictates everything that you do and how the teams work together and how that cohesively builds the organization. And so if I would highly recommend, if the company's not using that, to look into integrating that, reading, getting the traction book and bringing EOS systems in and really designing it so that people can feel a part of that culture. And I think it's so important, because if you do that, I think if you do it the right way, it really does work. And when things go back, it'll just be like, oh, we already know that, we've already been a part of that group and have added value to that. And they understand the dynamics of why they do what they do. Here we go back with Simon, right?
Yes.
It is so important, because then when they see it, they feel more connected to the purpose of the organization. So that's what I would recommend, I think, because onboarding can be, like you said, it can be a huge challenge. And to think about, from my experience in sales training for those many years of how did we do it internationally? We planned it, and then we took the equipment and the things over, and we knew we were going to be together. But having to do that in a virtual experience, especially maybe if, like my experience was medical devices. So you were hands-on, you had to do practice and demonstrations. And, there's a lot of apps for that, but it doesn't remove that kind of human component of being with each other, learning and keeping each other accountable, and what that customer experience is going to look like. So,
well, I'll give you another example, because my daughter is a freshman this year in college. And so she is taking a public speaking class. And one of the things, thank you, Randy. One of the things that she's doing is she's recording everything on her phone. So she's doing her speech, and then she's recording it on her phone, and then she's sending it in to her teacher. And that's the way of the world right now, is sending video messages and sending videos. Either you're doing something on YouTube, maybe you're doing a TikTok, maybe you're doing it on LinkedIn, whatever it is, maybe you're doing something live, but that's the way of the world. So they're teaching them. And if she was doing it in person, would she be doing the videos and sending them in? Probably not. Maybe they do it, for not a case study, those are my words, but they do it once or twice, but they probably wouldn't do it as much. And again, they're teaching them different skills. And I think that's great. So they're learning, and they're trying to encourage them in different forms of media.
I love it, because it helps people get over their fears. Right. And when you can do something, you can say, oh, I can erase that. I don't have to send that. I can just, I can try it. But a lot of people have never gotten outside of their comfort zone in communication. And
Right.
so it is really pushing the boundaries for all of us. And
Yep.
it's affected everybody in the world. That's what I love. This whole like psychology study, if we did a case study on this, right?
Mhm.
Because no one has been left behind. If you
Right.
want to use that
Right.
term, here it is. And so what's that going to look like in 10 years? This is really going to advance us, I
Mhm.
believe, as a
Mhm.
culture. So
Yep.
I'm really excited. There's people that embrace it. There's a lot of people that have had struggles and fears, though. So,
Mhm.
how are you? I guess my question for you would be, how are you recommending for people that are still like kind of stuck and going,
Mhm.
I'm just not really sure. I'm still really afraid. I've had a lot of pain and suffering through all of this, and I can't
Mhm.
accept, that I'm going to have to
Mhm.
change. What would you tell them? What would the resources be where they could go?
So I'm going to give you advice that I give to a lot of job seekers. And so I don't like to hold hands. I want to give advice and I want to empower them so that they can do it for themselves. Because if I'm going to do it for them, then they're not going to learn for the next time. So one of the things I say is, you need to try one thing. So we'll be having a session. I'll be coaching you. I'll be asking you, what are you doing on LinkedIn? What have you done with your resume? What are you doing on networking? And then I'll set goals for them and I'll encourage them. So for LinkedIn, well, they usually just look at all of the posts. Well, that's great. So why don't you try and like 5 posts this week or do it 5 times today? And then next week, you're going to do 5 times. You're going to like something 5 times, and then you're going to make 3 comments. And again, kind of build. And then the next week, you're going to try to do 1 post. Doesn't matter what it is. If you need subject ideas, I can help you. I can, point you in the right direction, but you're going to do 1 post. And
Mhm.
so give them ideas so that they can take those baby steps. And again, if they want to go all in and jump in the deep end and do 20 likes in one day, and then the next day they want to actually do their own posts, and then they become Randy. I saw Randy and he's a superstar on LinkedIn. Do something like that. That's great. But
Mhm.
again, do one thing. And if you do one thing today, you can do another thing tomorrow.
Mhm.
And that's what it is. It's about starting to be comfortable. There are all sorts of things that I have done, like doing something like this.
Mhm.
I never would have thought that I would have done something like this 6 months ago.
Mhm.
And I have another event that I'm doing on Friday, and it's a LinkedIn Live, and it's with somebody in India because they want to borrow some of our best practices in the veteran space. And so again, I wouldn't have done that 6 months ago. I'm stepping out, but I love it. I mean, it's fun.
Mhm.
So I see something I did.
Yeah. Well, it's really awesome, and I saw this today because we were
Mhm.
communicating back and forth on LinkedIn. But, this is an article, so if you're not connected to Mary Leone, Leone,
Mhm.
go to, LinkedIn and find this article, because I think it's really important. It just talks about everything that she's led us through,
Mhm.
but really gives you the steps. And so if you're looking for something to say, "Ugh, I just need a little bit of inspiration," right? This is a great place to start.
Right.
So,
Yep. Nope.
so great.
Yes.
Man, Mary, you're just, full of punch tonight.
Oh, you're funny. I must have eaten something good, right? Some extra chocolate, right?
Well, it's really important, and so, I just so appreciate you. I'm so glad that we've had this time to be able to just share all ideas, and so many people that have joined us tonight. I just, think it's great, because here's the holidays, and so if you've got vacation time or if you're thinking about, "I'm gonna unwind and start reflecting," one of the things that I've learned in the last few years is to really take that week between Christmas
Mhm.
and the New Year's and really reflect on
Mhm.
what you're wanting to get accomplished in the next year. And so, it's really important that even though we have goals and we're saying we've got to get on these virtual summits and we need to learn and we got to get charged up for 2021, now is also a time to just kind of reflect and choose the things that are important to you
Mhm.
and not feel so overwhelmed if you got to get it all done,
Right.
because you're home. It's going to be okay. And
Yes.
and so follow some of those steps. Learn some of those strategies. Turn your
Yes.
phone off. Give yourself time and permission to start to learn what you really, are
Mhm.
gonna be inspired to do. So,
Mhm.
My goodness, Mary, Mary, Mary. So besides, you've got your website and then your LinkedIn page. So if you guys are following Mary Leone, Leone, if you follow this on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, please go find her and just reach out. Give us a shout out on the comments here and let us know. If you have any other questions, we'll be happy to follow up with you and answer any of those things that you have. And if you know people that are looking for some advice in this transformation, especially for veterans, Mary is the person that you need to go to and connect to. So, Mary, I thank you so much for coming on tonight. You have any last minute advice for us for the rest of 2020?
I think I have two things. First of all, I want to follow up on what you talked about in terms of being reflective. I would say be reflective and think about all of the things that you are grateful for. So, kind of an attitude of gratitude. There are a lot of things. I know that some of this stuff is kind of crappy that are happening right now, but there are a lot of really good things as well. So I can say, my family, I have good friends, I'm starting a new business, I've met wonderful people along this journey, I have my faith, I have, so many things. And so figure out what are those things, what are you grateful for, whether you journal. I'm not a journal person, but think about those things. And I try to remind myself, at least on a daily basis, something that you're grateful for. And I'm very much a glass half full. I'm an optimist in almost anything. So you'll see my posts and I'll always have some kind of optimist spin. So that's just me. And then what I would also say is I would say challenge yourself. Do one thing that makes you uncomfortable every day, or figure out what can you do to change things up and look at things differently. And I would say that maybe it took me 6 people to hear say you need to start your own business, but I listened. And there are some people that I go to because they tell me very different things than what I'm used to hearing from other people. And I like that. I like being able to think outside of my box. I like being able to think about what is that thing that I want to do that's different that I wouldn't normally do. Do I want to swim across the ocean? I don't know, maybe. Do I want to try paddleboarding? Maybe. There's so many things to try and to do, but just try one. Try one today and then figure it out. What can you do differently tomorrow or the next year? So those are the 2 things that I would say.
Those are great things. Those are great things. Oh, Doug has a couple of more things he
Okay.
says here. Yes, embracing something new each day. It is a great example. And so many of us say, oh, well, I'll try that tomorrow, right? But do it today.
Do it today.
Do it today.
Yeah.
Because it's important. I'll tell you, we started a Bible study back in October of 2019.
Oh, wow.
And tomorrow, I think, is like 428 days of consistency.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's been crazy to think about the consistency that's the clarity, that you just say, okay, well, I'm getting something out of that, so I should keep doing it. And it really has grown and bonded people, and people have started new things. But it's, that idea that somebody inspires you to do something different, and then you take action on it.
Yes.
And then what it can become is just amazing. So I'm just a testament to that. I think it's, I've always thought, well, could you keep something up for every single day? Well, we have been. And there's a lot of things, you get out of bed every day, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You did one thing today.
Yeah.
But yes, I love this. And Mary, you are awesome. And thank you just for sharing everything, all your knowledge tonight and helping so many people. And I know that there are going to be great things to come out of this conversation and this teaching. So I just appreciate you so much. And if there's anything that I can ever do, if you're launching something, come back and share with the Everyday Leaders platform and let us help you celebrate that.
Well, cool. Well, thank you. I am so tickled that you asked that I join your call tonight. And thank you again. It was wonderful. And I look forward to continuing this relationship because you're a wonderful person and I've learned so much from you. So thank you.
You're welcome. This will be so much fun. And for those of you that are following us this week, we are going to tomorrow night. Misael Diaz is going to be joining us at 7:00 Eastern, and we're going to be talking about our journeys through the John Maxwell team. So it'll be really great because
Interesting.
he inspired me to start so many things, and I have just listened and leaned in, and has helped me grow in so many ways. So if you are on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook tomorrow night at 7, don't miss that opportunity. And then Saturday, Dan Dominguez is going to join me, and we're going to go through my why. If you guys have not heard about the Why Institute, Dan Dominguez is part of this, and he said, hey, there's 9 whys why we exist in the world. And so we are going to work through my why live and then talk about how we develop that into our kind of our talk track and our pitch for who we are in the world. So I am super excited about that. And that's at 10 o'clock Eastern on Saturday. So we'll be doing that like right here. And so I just want to encourage people. I want to encourage growth and, push yourself beyond the limits. Like Mary said, just try that one thing new every day and challenge yourself. Because what I know is being challenging and giving yourself the opportunities, that's really what everyday leaders are. Every single day you do something different so that you can show up and add value to yourself so you can add value and change the world. And that's what I love about this platform. This is where we celebrate all of our everyday leaders across the world. So thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you so much, Mary, and have a great holiday season.
Thank you. You too.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.